So Rashid, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Cape Town. I'm born and bred. I grew up just below Table Mountain, and I managed to, through the diversity or the adversity of apartheid, we lived various places across Cape Town. But where did I grow up was a little bit because of the amount of times I've traveled abroad. So I really think I've really grown up because of my living and traveling in various places around the world.
And tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
It was definitely to be a game ranger. I've always loved being out in the wild, and I always thought I would work in that industry one day.
And who inspired you, or maybe what inspired you in your early days?
I think it was the adversity of apartheid. It was seeing around me that things were stacked against us as people of color, and the opportunity to rise up above that. So I've always wanted to make sure that I was the first person in our family to get a university degree and to really move up from living on the Cape Flats and to make a success of myself so that it inspires people around me. So I'd say the system in apartheid at the time was what inspired me.
Now, we crossed paths around the World Cup 2010. You were the CEO of the Cape Town Convention Center. Can you maybe share what's your best memory from the 2010 World Cup?
Yeah, just before the World Cup, we hosted the FIFA final draw. And I must say, I've never been in a more high-pressured environment where you're about to go live to 100 million viewers, and Sepp Blatter sort of personally is sitting there saying, we can't make a mistake. And we had all sorts of contingencies, like 5 different contingencies if the power went down and so forth. So, and then the highlight for me was at the end of that, Sepp Blatter sort of calling me over and saying, wow, I don't think we could ever do the FIFA final draw like this was done, like well done, and congratulations to your team. So I think that was a very proud moment to have put us on the world map as a country and as a group of people that can create absolutely world-beating events, you know.
And tell us, today you're in charge of economic development and tourism in a time where obviously tourism is suffering worldwide. What is your vision for Cape Town and the Western Cape when it comes to tourism coming back?
Well, you know, Cape Town and South Africa are one of those places you just simply have to see. I would say it's literally on everyone's bucket list. And I don't think anything has changed. I think what we need to do is make sure we communicate a destination that is safe. And that's not just from COVID, but that feels like you can go there and there's a sense of trust in the journey. And I do think we are one of those places which are different. And I think we will always be positioned as a place that creates that unique travel experience. So it really is about that living experience of interesting people and interesting places. And I'm very confident it will come back. It may not come back at the same numbers, but the quality will be there and we'll be able to still be a leader in that space.
And Rashid, tell us, what is driving you today?
I think what's always driven me and what drives me more is to just leave the world a better place after I've been here, and to inspire. Particularly now, I find when I walk into a room, I realize like, wow, I'm the oldest guy in this room. And I'm really now not about learning as much as I am about inspiring other people and showing an example. So for me, it's about inspiring the next generation to believe they can do anything they want. That drives me every day.
Now, Rashid, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, you know, when I did my MBA, I did a thesis on collaborative leadership and the power of using some of our ancient leadership methodologies like Ubuntu and Guanxi in China. And I looked at various types of leadership that come from the soul of people. And I do think the future of leadership is still in that space. what I would say collaborative leadership that's distributive, where you realize you're leading a group of people, but you don't know all the answers, and where it's integrated and where it's flat and people are able to contribute. And COVID-19 has shown that, where you get into a Zoom meeting and it doesn't matter what your rank is, everyone has an equal opportunity to put up your hand and speak. And I like that, and I think that's where leadership will continue to go, in that direction.
And tell us, Rashid, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
I mean, from my journey, the best leaders I've had are the ones who show their passion and their authenticity. So for me, when I lead people, I want them to two things. I want them to know that I care, that I have compassion and passion, but I also am very clear around what my standards are, and those are not to be wavered. They're not going to waver. So there's those two sides. People who are around me, I think good leaders need to show people that you care, but also show them what your limits and what your standards are that you would expect from them.
And when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own brand?
Well, first of all, I think they need to just, I think they need to be personal, and they need to be direct and be authentic. So I always blend my professional engagements of opening a hotel or doing a speech with the fact that I'm also just on holiday with my family and enjoying my life and my destination. So for me, social media has to be that blend of you seeing the full person. So if I know Nick is a professional writer, I'd also love to know what else you do with your career and what you do with your life. I think that creates, you can create that influencer feeling in a positive way, where people look at you and they're inspired by that.
Now, Rashid, what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges that they should expect to encounter in their career?
So I think they're going to, you're going to encounter obstructive people who don't want you to go in a certain direction. And I have always had scant regard for that. I don't regard a small blockage as a reason to not do something. I regard it as a challenge that you have to overcome. And you're going to encounter obstructive people. You're going to encounter bureaucracy and the age-old, this is how things are done. And I think if you want to be a leader of the future, you need to push through that. You need to be clear about what you want and what you'd like to achieve, and use all your power and your resources and your influence to push beyond that. So expect there are going to be blockages and challenges and obstructive people, and push through that. And I mean, the second thing, Nick, is you might as well prepare yourself for diminishing budgets. I think we've got at least the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be in a world where we're going to be coming from a recessionary base, and start getting used to doing things with less budget and a little bit more smartly. Unless you're one of the lucky companies that are just simply flying, but that's not going to be the usual game anymore.
And Rashid, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
I think I'd want to factor in, apart from the normal hard stuff that you hear, I'd like to factor in a lot of work on EQ, on understanding yourself better, and then understanding what it means to relate to other people. So I think that skill is crucial as a leader. Yes, there's many management skills you can learn. Anyone can learn that in a textbook, but the stuff that you have to do by doing it, by practicing it, is learning how to have a strong EQ. And basically for me, EQ is about understanding yourself and then understanding how you relate to other people.
Now, as a mentor to future leaders, Rashid, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
I've got a couple of examples. Sometimes they're not even people who maybe, I'm not sure if they formally regard me as a mentor, but they certainly were under my leadership. And I've I've got a few people. There's one person, I don't know if you wanted me to get personal, but he used to work with me at CTICC, and he's now in China, and he heads up a huge group of convention centers in China. And I'm always really inspired to see how he's grown from being a kind of head of food and beverage to being a complete leader of an organization. And I think that came from the work that we did together, where we always did work that we'd spent time working on our leadership. We didn't just fix the event, run the food, run the beverage, run the hotel. We focused on what it meant to be a good leader. And I think we maybe don't stop enough times to do that. And then the second example, which inspires me always, is I've got a younger brother, like a 14-year-old younger brother who's such an inspiring business leader. And I think we have lots of chats, and I think that I've regarded myself as a kind of forerunner for him to look at what I do, to just even look at my example and build on that. So, and I think he's done amazingly, taken it to new levels. But I feel I've been part of that journey, and it feels good to have been part of it.
Yeah, Rashid. So in your leadership journey, and maybe in your learning journey, who are some of the role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
So unquestionably for me, a role model was Nelson Mandela. I think both in my studies and in my personal experiences in life, I'm inspired by both the strength of Nelson Mandela, but also the gentleness, the ability to be disarming in people. And I'd love to one day walk into a room and have that kind of presence, and where people can almost gauge your integrity and your strength just by walking into the room. So President Nelson Mandela certainly inspires me. But I also think that everyday people inspire me. And I think people shouldn't always look to the world's greatest leaders for examples of people who could inspire you. I see fantastic leadership values within people around me. It might be a teacher. It might even be someone who reports into me. It doesn't have to be someone who's higher than you in the hierarchy. So I think in the everyday examples of people around you is where we find a lot of role models, and we should learn by those little nuggets and make that part of our leadership journey. And
tell us, Rashid, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
So I'm just on LinkedIn. I think I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter are my two areas of social media that I'm active in. And if people want to engage with me, I'd love to have a Zoom chat, and they can reach out to me via those two mediums.
And last but not least, Rashid, is there one piece of advice that you would like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own life?
I think the one little thing I'd say is just always be authentic, be true to yourself, and know that people learn from your example. Everyone, whether they're your children or your employees or people, even the people who you follow, will learn from your example. So just show your passion in life, and know that you're inspiring people around you at all times.
Well, Rashid, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and reminding us that Cape Town is probably the most beautiful destination.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. And yes, I mean, it's beautiful aesthetically just to look at, but I think there's something special in the water here in Cape Town that also produces amazing people who can really change the world, and we will continue to do so. Thank you, Nick.
Perfect.